I never thought I'd have to run for my life, especially from a killer living in my house, eating dinner with my mom, and knowing a dark secret about her. I'm Ava Bennett, 13, from Cedar Falls, Iowa, a small town where cornfields stretch endlessly and everyone thinks they know each other. But no one knows the truth about Ethan Cole, the man my mom, Rachel, brought home weeks after my dad, Daniel Bennett, was arrested for a crime he didn't commit. Dad was wrongfully convicted for a murder at the Iron Horse Tavern, where I saw him stumble out, blood covering his shirt, yelling for help. The police cuffed him right in front of me, and I knew he was innocent. But my mom, she believed Ethan, called him my new dad, and didn't know he was hiding a terrifying plot. Ethan wasn't like Dad. His eyes were cold as stone, always watching me like he was calculating something. He'd say things like, "Ava, you're growing up so fast, so special." Mom smiled, thinking it was sweet, but I felt something wicked in his voice. I tried telling her Ethan scared me, but she called me too sensitive and revealed she'd known him before Dad's arrest. Her words cut like a knife. Then I got an anonymous letter from someone calling himself Mr. Hayes, telling me to find a journal Dad hid in the shed behind our house. That journal held the truth about Ethan, not just a con man, but part of a criminal gang targeting our family. The night I found it, Ethan chased me through the cornfields, shouting, "Give it back, Ava, or your mom will pay." I hid in an abandoned grain silo, heart pounding, clutching the journal. I knew I held the key to saving Dad, but if Ethan caught me, I wouldn't live to tell this story. This is my journey, a 13-year-old girl facing a killer, a family secret, and a plot bigger than Cedar Falls. Can I bring Dad home? Is the truth strong enough to take down Ethan? Stay with me, because what happens next will leave you speechless. My name is Ava Bennett, and I never thought my life would become a nightmare in a single night. I live in Cedar Falls, Iowa, a small town where cornfields stretch forever, and folks gather at the annual corn festival like it's the biggest event in the world. Here, everyone thinks they know each other, but no one knows the truth about my family or the man who stepped into our lives like a dark shadow. This is my story about how I, a 13-year-old girl, fought to free my dad from prison and expose a killer living in our home. It all began on a chilly fall night 2 years ago. My dad, Daniel Bennett, worked at the Iron Horse Tavern, a noisy spot packed with farmers and truckers. Dad wasn't a party guy. He worked to pay for our small wooden house, where I grew up with Sunday mornings filled with the smell of his coffee and his off-key singing of old songs. He was a gentleman, telling jokes that made me giggle and hugging me tight when I was scared. But that night at the Iron Horse Tavern, everything fell apart. I was there, sitting in a corner with a lemonade, doing homework. Suddenly, I heard a scream. Dad rushed out of the bathroom, his shirt soaked in blood, face pale as a ghost. He yelled, begging someone to call the police, saying a man had been stabbed. I jumped up, heart pounding, but before I could process it, the cops stormed in. They saw the blood on Dad's hands, cuffed him, and dragged him away. I screamed his name, but no one listened. The next time I saw him was through a glass pane in jail, his eyes full of pain. He swore he was innocent, that he'd only tried to save the man. I believed him, but my mom, Rachel, didn't. Weeks later, Mom brought Ethan Cole home. She introduced him as her new boyfriend, but soon called him my new dad. Ethan wasn't like Dad. He was tall, with eyes cold as stone, like he was always calculating something. He smiled, but it never felt real. From day one, he gave me chills. He'd stare at me over dinner, chewing slowly, saying, "Ava, You're growing up so fast, so special. Mom laughed, thinking it was sweet, but I felt something wicked in his voice. I tried telling her Ethan scared me, but she shook her head, saying I was too sensitive. Then one night when I mentioned Dad, she looked away and said something that stopped my heart. She'd known Ethan before Dad's arrest. Her words cut like a knife, making me doubt even her. But what pushed me to act was an anonymous letter I found in my backpack from someone calling himself Mr. Hayes. It read, "Your dad is innocent. Find the journal he hid in the shed behind your house." I didn't know who Mr. Hayes was, but I knew I had to find the truth, even if it meant facing Ethan and Mom's dark secret. My name is Ava Bennett, and though I'm only 13, I've learned that love for family can carry you through the darkest days. After the night my dad, Daniel Bennett, was arrested at the Iron Horse Tavern in Cedar Falls, Iowa, my life was torn apart. Dad was wrongfully convicted for a murder he didn't commit, and my mom, Rachel, brought Ethan Cole into our home, calling him my new dad. But what shocked me most was Mom revealing she'd known Ethan before Dad's arrest. Then an anonymous letter from someone calling himself Mr. Hayes appeared, telling me to find a journal Dad hid in the shed behind our house. I didn't know who Mr. Hayes was, but I knew Dad was innocent. He's the kindest man I've ever known, and I'd do anything to bring him home. Dad wasn't like Ethan. He was the man who made me laugh with his terrible jokes, who burned pancakes on Sunday mornings, but still made me feel safe. I remember him teaching me to ride a bike on the gravel path behind our house, holding my hand when I fell. But now, he was just words on a computer screen at the Cedar Falls High Library. I had to contact him secretly because Ethan controlled everything: my phone, my backpack, even my homework notebooks. Every day after school, I'd sneak into the library, where the smell of old paper and the hum of computers gave me a small corner of safety. I created a secret email account to send messages to Dad, telling him how I missed him, how Ethan scared me, and about the strange letter from Mr. Hayes. I was afraid to write too much, terrified Ethan would find out, but I couldn't stop. Dad replied, though I knew each email was a huge effort for him. He wrote about his days in jail, the cold walls, and the nights he lay awake listening to the wind, thinking of me. He always insisted he was innocent, that he'd only tried to save the man stabbed at the Iron Horse Tavern. His words were a flame warming me. One time he wrote about the day I was born, how he cried holding me for the first time. He said I was his greatest miracle, and even behind bars he believed I'd find the truth. Reading that, I bit my lip to keep from crying in the library, but that email also held a clue that made my heart race. Dad confirmed Mr. Hayes's words. "Ava, I hid a journal in the shed behind the old wooden crate. It holds the truth about Ethan Cole. Be careful, sweetheart." The thought of sneaking into the shed terrified me. Ethan was always watching, sometimes standing in the yard, staring into the cornfields like he knew I was hiding something. I even doubted Mom because she'd known Ethan before. What was she hiding? And who was Mr. Hayes? That anonymous letter was like a puzzle, but I knew I had to solve it. I started planning, waiting for a night when Mom and Ethan went to the town's corn festival. I'd slip into the shed, find the journal, and uncover the truth. But every time I thought of Ethan's cold eyes, I felt like I was walking a tightrope, ready to snap at any moment. I'm Ava Bennett, and though I'm only 13, I've learned that sometimes the people you think will protect you push you into danger. After my dad, Daniel Bennett, was wrongfully convicted for a murder at the Iron Horse Tavern in Cedar Falls, Iowa, my life became a string of fearful days. My mom, Rachel, brought Ethan Cole into our home, calling him my new dad, and revealed she'd known him before Dad's arrest. An anonymous letter from someone calling himself Mr. Hayes told me to find a journal Dad hid in the shed, something that could prove his innocence. I knew I had to act, but Ethan wasn't just any man. He was a monster, and every day he revealed more of his true nature. Ethan took control of everything in our small wooden house. He didn't just sleep in Dad's room or use his favorite chair. He wanted to erase every trace of Dad. One morning, I found out Mom had changed my school records to Ava Cole. When I asked why, she said, "You'll understand when you're older, Ava. Ethan's our family now." But that wasn't family. It was a trap, and Ethan was the one setting it. He started appearing in my room at night, standing in the doorway, his eyes glinting in the dark like a predator's. Once he grabbed my wrist so hard it left bruises, whispering, "Naughty girls like you don't last long, Ava." I wanted to scream, but I knew if I did, he'd have an excuse to do worse. I tried telling Mom, but she shook her head, her voice trembling. "Ethan just wants what's best for you. Don't mess things up." Then she looked away, like she was hiding something. I remembered her saying she'd known Ethan before, and I started wondering if she knew something about him she wouldn't admit. Ethan's behavior grew more terrifying. He rifled through my things, my backpack, my phone, even my homework from Cedar Falls High. One evening, with Mom asleep, he came into my room, sat on the edge of my bed, and put his hand on my knee. His voice was sickly sweet, but cold as ice. "You should be grateful for me, Ava. Without me, your mom would lose everything because of her old mistakes." His words chilled me. What mistakes? What had Mom done that Ethan could use against her? I shoved his hand off and bolted to the bathroom, locking the door, curling up on the cold floor, heart pounding. I didn't dare tell Mom again. The last time she scolded me, saying, "Don't ruin my happiness." I felt trapped, with no one to trust except Dad, locked away behind bars. But what broke me was when Mom announced she and Ethan were getting engaged right after the Cedar Falls Corn Festival. She said it in the kitchen, like it was the best news ever. Ethan stood there, flashing a fake smile, saying, "We'll be a real family, Ava. You'll call me Dad." I wanted to scream that he could never replace my dad, that my real dad was innocent, but I stayed silent, knowing Ethan watched my every move. That night, lying in bed, I thought about the journal Dad hid in the shed. It was my only hope, but also the most dangerous thing. If Ethan caught me searching for the truth, he'd use Mom's secret to destroy us. I felt like I was standing in a burning cornfield with no way out. But I knew I had to keep going, for Dad and for myself. I'm Ava Bennett, and though I'm only 13, I've learned that sometimes you have to hide your fear to protect those you love. My dad, Daniel Bennett, is wrongfully imprisoned for a murder he didn't commit at the Iron Horse Tavern in Cedar Falls, Iowa. My mom, Rachel, brought Ethan Cole into our home, calling him my new dad, and I know she's hiding a secret tied to him from before Dad's arrest. An anonymous letter from someone calling himself Mr. Hayes told me to find a journal Dad hid in the shed behind our house, something that could prove his innocence. Ethan grows scarier every day, threatening me and rummaging through my things, making me feel like a prisoner in my own home. But I haven't given up. I have to find that journal, and to do it, I must secretly contact Dad, even if it puts me in danger. Ethan controls everything: my backpack, my phone, even my notebooks from Cedar Falls High. I know if he catches me reaching out to Dad, he'll do something terrible, especially since he holds Mom's secret over her. So I only email Dad from the school library's computers, where the smell of old paper and the hum of cooling fans give me a sense of safety. Every day after class, I sneak into a quiet corner of the library, logging into a secret email account I created. I send Dad short messages telling him about school, how Ethan scares me, and the strange letter from Mr. Hayes. I ask about the journal, praying he'll confirm it's real. I don't dare write too much, afraid someone might glance over my shoulder. But each email from Dad is a spark of light, like he's right beside me, whispering, "I'm not alone." Dad replies, though I know it's hard for him in jail. He writes about his days locked up, the gray, cold walls, and the tasteless meals, but he always insists he's innocent, that he only tried to save the man stabbed at the Iron Horse Tavern. One afternoon, when I opened his latest email, my heart raced. He wrote, "Ava, the journal's in the shed behind the old wooden crate near the window. It holds the truth about Ethan Cole and what he did. Be careful, sweetheart. He's more dangerous than you think." I read those words over and over, my hands shaking so much the chair creaked. But that same day, I found a second anonymous letter from Mr. Hayes slipped into my school locker. It read, "Ethan's suspicious of you. Don't let him see the journal." The warning sent a chill down my spine. Who was Mr. Hayes? How did he know so much? And why was Mom so afraid of Ethan? I started planning, but every step was risky. I had to wait for a night when Mom and Ethan went to the Cedar Falls Corn Festival where the whole town gathers. I pictured myself slipping into the shed, holding a small hammer to pry open the wooden crate, my heart pounding in the dark. But I was scared. Ethan often stood in the yard, staring into the cornfields like he knew something was hidden. If he caught me, or if Mom spilled her secret to him, I didn't know what would happen. But I thought of Dad, his emails, how he called me his greatest miracle. I couldn't let him down. That night, lying in bed, I heard the wind howl through the fields. I knew I was about to walk a dangerous path, but I was ready. The journal was waiting, and I'd find the truth no matter the cost. I'm Ava Bennett, and though I'm only 13, I've stood on the edge between life and death just to save my dad. My dad, Daniel Bennett, is wrongfully imprisoned for a murder he didn't commit at the Iron Horse Tavern in Cedar Falls, Iowa. My mom, Rachel, brought Ethan Cole into our home, calling him my new dad, and I know she's hiding a secret about him from before Dad's arrest. Through secret emails and an anonymous letter from someone calling himself Mr. Hayes, I learned Dad hid a journal in the shed behind our house, holding the truth about Ethan. Ethan grows more terrifying, threatening me and rifling through my things, making me live in constant fear. But I didn't give up. The night I went to find the journal, I had no idea I'd uncover a plot more horrifying than I could imagine. I waited for a Saturday night when Mom and Ethan went to the Cedar Falls Corn Festival, where the whole town gathers under bright lights. Our wooden house was shrouded in darkness, only the wind howling through the cornfields breaking the silence. I grabbed a small hammer and a flashlight, my heart pounding like it might burst from my chest. The shed behind our house reeked of old wood and motor oil, the flashlight's beam cutting through dusty crates and cobwebs. I found the old wooden crate near the window, just as Dad described. My hands shook as I tapped lightly with the hammer, the wood creaking with each hit. After a few minutes, I saw a small plastic bundle. It was the journal, its worn leather cover and Dad's handwritten words glowing under the light. I clutched it to my chest, feeling like I'd touched a piece of him. I opened the journal right there in the shed, unable to wait. Dad's words chronicled the days before his arrest. He wrote about Ethan, how he showed up at the Iron Horse Tavern too often, always asking about Dad's schedule. But what stopped me cold was a page near the end. Dad wrote, "Ethan knew Rachel a year before the case. He works for an Iowa smuggling ring, targeting Rachel's insurance money and Ava's trust fund if anything happens to her. I saw him deal with a stranger at the bar, planning something. I have to protect my family. My heart froze. Ethan hadn't just framed Dad, he'd been scheming for years, using Mom and targeting me, too. The journal was a bomb in my hands, and I knew if Ethan saw it, he'd show no mercy. I was tucking the journal into my shirt when I heard tires crunching gravel in the driveway. Ethan and Mom were back early. The shed door creaked, and Ethan's voice sliced through, cold as a blade. "Ava, where are you?" I switched off the flashlight, holding my breath, but my feet felt rooted. I shoved the journal into my waistband and darted for the back door, but Ethan was there, blocking my path. His eyes gleamed in the dark like a predator's. He growled, "What'd you take from there, kid?" I stammered, saying I was looking for old toys, but he gripped my shoulder, his breath heavy with whiskey. "Don't lie to me," he roared. Just then, Mom called him from the house, and he let me go, but his eyes warned this wasn't over. I bolted into the cornfields, clutching the journal, heart racing. I hid in an abandoned grain silo, like in a nightmare. The truth in those pages shook me. Ethan wasn't just out to hurt Dad, but Mom and me, too. I had to protect the journal, even if it meant facing a killer. I'm Ava Bennett, and though I'm only 13, I've learned that sometimes you can't fight alone, even when you hold the truth. After finding my dad, Daniel Bennett's, journal in the shed behind our house in Cedar Falls, Iowa, I knew I was clutching a dangerous secret. The journal revealed that Ethan Cole, the man my mom, Rachel, called my new dad, didn't just frame my dad for a murder at the Iron Horse Tavern, but worked for a smuggling ring targeting Mom's insurance money and even me. The night I found the journal, Ethan nearly caught me, chasing me through the cornfields, forcing me to hide in an abandoned grain silo. I knew I needed help. Ethan was growing suspicious, and Mom was still under his control, trapped by her past secret. But I remembered one person who could help. Jack Larson, Dad's best friend. Jack was a retired cop who used to play baseball with Dad on summer days in Cedar Falls. He was tall, with a warm, gravelly voice and the faint smell of coffee from his daily black brew. After Dad's arrest, Mom banned Jack from contacting us, saying he stirred up bad memories. But I knew that was a lie. Jack was kind, always telling jokes and slipping me marshmallows when I was little. I found his number in an old address book in the kitchen, buried under a mess of papers. I called him from a payphone outside Cedar Falls High, faking a stomachache to skip gym class. When he heard my voice, he said, "Ava, kiddo, you okay?" I spilled everything about Ethan, the journal, the smuggling ring. Jack told me to stay calm and meet him at the Cedar Falls Public Library after school. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. At the library, Jack was waiting at an old wooden table, his face serious as he read the journal. He said Dad had always suspected Ethan but lacked proof. The journal was a start, but we needed more. Witnesses, documents, anything to nail Ethan. Jack knew people who'd worked at the Iron Horse Tavern and said he'd dig deeper, but I knew I had to act too. Ethan controlled my phone, so I thought of TikTok. Using a school computer, I posted an anonymous video, filming the cornfields and saying briefly, "Who was at the Iron Horse Tavern on March 15th? I need the truth about an incident." I didn't expect it to blow up in town. Days later, a message came from an account named Jenna. She said she was a bartender there that night and saw Ethan acting strange, leaving just before chaos broke out. My heart raced. Jenna agreed to meet Jack to share more. With Jack and Jenna's lead, I felt we had a chance, but Ethan was getting suspicious. He started following me to school, waiting outside the gates, his eyes sharp as knives. I knew time was running out. The journal was my weapon, but I needed more evidence to take Ethan down before he struck first. I'm Ava Bennett, and though I'm only 13, I've learned that the truth can be a double-edged sword. It can save you, but it can also put you in peril. My dad, Daniel Bennett, is wrongfully imprisoned for a murder at the Iron Horse Tavern in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Ethan Cole, the man my mom, Rachel, calls my new dad, orchestrated it all, working for a smuggling ring targeting our family. After finding Dad's journal, I teamed up with Jack Larson, Dad's best friend, and got a lead from Jenna, a bartender, via TikTok. The journal exposed Ethan's plot, but I knew it wasn't enough. I needed stronger evidence to save Dad. What happened next thrust me into a nightmare I barely escaped. Jack contacted an old friend at the Iron Horse Tavern, a manager named Carl, who revealed the bar had a backup security camera the police never checked 2 years ago. Carl kept the footage on an old hard drive in storage. Jack and I met him at a small diner, the air thick with the scent of waffles. As Carl plugged the drive into his laptop, my heart pounded. The video loaded, time-stamped March 15th, the night Dad was arrested. It showed Ethan entering the bathroom at 9:47 p.m., holding a small bag, his face cold. 5 minutes later, he walked out, checking his watch, not a speck of blood on him. Dad went in at 9:52, and a minute later he stumbled out, blood staining his shirt, face frantic, yelling for help. The truth was clear on the screen. Ethan killed the man and framed Dad. Jack copied the footage onto a USB, saying it was the key to overturning the case. But I wanted Ethan to confess. During the Cedar Falls Corn Festival, where the town gathered under lanterns and the smell of popcorn, I deliberately let Ethan see me holding the journal near a game booth. He snatched it from my hands, eyes blazing with rage. I shouted, "You can't hide forever. I know what you did." He dragged me into a shadowed corner, growling, "You think you're smart, Ava? I killed that guy, and I'll take all your mom's money. You and she are mine." I'd pressed record on my friend Mia's phone hidden in my jacket pocket. But before I could run, a stranger, Ethan's accomplice, grabbed me, shoving me into a truck parked behind the festival. In the dark, I trembled, hearing Ethan order, "Keep her there until I'm done." But I still had the USB with the video in my pocket, and the phone kept recording. I kicked the truck's door, screaming, and luckily Mia, who'd seen me dragged away, followed and called Jack. They found the truck near the cornfields, and Jack scared off the accomplice with his old pistol. He fled, leaving me behind. I scrambled out, clutching the USB and phone, heart racing. Ethan's confession was clear on the recording, and the video was undeniable proof. But Ethan was still out there, and I knew he wouldn't stop. I had to get this evidence to Mom before he struck again. I'm Ava Bennett, and though I'm only 13, I've learned that sometimes the truth can shatter what you hold dear, but it can also offer a chance to mend. My dad, Daniel Bennett, is wrongfully imprisoned for a murder at the Iron Horse Tavern in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Ethan Cole, the man my mom, Rachel, called my new dad, orchestrated it all, working for a smuggling ring targeting our family. With Dad's journal, security footage, and Ethan's confession I recorded at the Corn Festival, Jack Larson and I had enough evidence to take him down. But Ethan nearly killed me when his accomplice kidnapped me in a truck. I escaped, but I knew I had to get the evidence to Mom. After all the times she chose Ethan over me, I wasn't sure she'd believe me. But I had to try, for Dad and for us. I returned home that night, clutching the USB with the security footage and Mia's phone with the recorded confession. Mom was in the kitchen, washing dishes, her eyes weary from a long day at the grocery store. Ethan wasn't home, likely hiding after the failed kidnapping. I took a deep breath, placed the USB on the table, and told her everything. I spoke of Dad's journal, how Ethan framed him, and the smuggling ring he worked for. Mom stared, shaking her head, her voice trembling. Ava, you're making this up again. Ethan loves us. You have to stop blaming him. Her words cut like a knife, but I didn't back down. I opened the phone and played Ethan's confession. His voice filled the quiet kitchen, cold and ruthless. I killed that guy, and I'll take all your mom's money. You and she are mine. Mom froze, dropping a plate, shards scattering across the floor. Her face went pale, like she'd woken from a nightmare. She whispered, "He threatened me, Ava. He knew I stole money from the store to pay gambling debts before I met your dad. He said he'd turn me in if I didn't obey him." Mom's confession stunned me, but I had no time to react. The front door slammed open, and Ethan stood there, eyes bloodshot, breath reeking of whiskey. He heard his voice on the recording, and his fake smile vanished. "Rachel, you don't believe this kid, do you?" he said, his tone sweet but menacing. He stepped forward, but Mom backed away, hands shaking as she grabbed the hunting rifle from the kitchen wall, the one Dad used for duck hunting. She aimed it at him, voice steady. "Get out of my house, Ethan, or I'll shoot." I'd never seen Mom so fierce, like the mom who sang lullabies when I was little. Ethan sneered, but seeing her finger on the trigger, he retreated, snatching his keys and bolting out, yelling, "This isn't over!" Mom collapsed to the floor, the rifle slipping from her hands, sobbing. She pulled me into her arms, whispering, "I'm sorry, Ava. I was blind. I don't deserve to be your mom." I cried too, not out of anger, but because she finally saw the truth. She held the USB, promising to take it to the police. For the first time in months, we felt like a family, even if just the two of us. But I knew Ethan was still out there, and he wouldn't give up. We had to act fast before he returned with his gang. I'm Ava Bennett, and though I'm only 13, I've learned that the truth, though painful, can bring light after the darkest days. My dad, Daniel Bennett, was wrongfully imprisoned for a murder at the Iron Horse Tavern in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Ethan Cole, the man my mom Rachel called my new dad, orchestrated it all, working for a smuggling ring targeting our family. With Dad's journal, security footage, and Ethan's confession I recorded at the Corn Festival, Jack Larson and I had enough evidence. When Mom finally woke up, confronting Ethan with a hunting rifle, I thought we were safe. But Ethan fled, and I knew he'd return with his gang. We had to act fast, and this time, Mom stood by me, determined to bring Ethan to justice. That night, after Ethan ran from our house, Mom called the police. I sat beside her in the living room, listening as she recounted everything over the phone, her voice shaky but resolute. She handed them the security footage and the USB with Ethan's confession I'd backed up from Mia's phone. 2 officers arrived, a kind-eyed older man with a gentle smile and a woman who spoke softly. They watched the video, listened to the recording, and took careful notes. The woman officer looked at me and said, "You're incredibly brave, Ava. Not many adults could do what you did." I didn't feel brave, just exhausted, but her words made me want to cry. They issued a warrant for Ethan that night, but he'd vanished. His apartment was empty, his car gone. Mom and I didn't sleep, huddled on the couch, the front door locked tight, every light blazing in our wooden house. The next morning, Jack called. A friend at the police station said Ethan was spotted at an old warehouse near the cornfields where his gang stashed contraband. The police surrounded the place, and Ethan tried to flee but was caught tripping in the cornstalks. In his car, they found a knife, the real murder weapon from the Iron Horse Tavern, still with dried blood in the handle. They also found papers linking him to the smuggling ring, proving he wasn't just a murderer, but tied to other crimes across Iowa. The biggest shock was a letter from Mr. Hayes in Ethan's pocket. Jack revealed Mr. Hayes was Dad's old co-worker from the tavern who helped hide the journal before Dad's arrest. He sent anonymous letters out of fear of Ethan's retaliation, but was now ready to testify. Days later, Mom and I drove to the Des Moines jail. When the gate opened, Dad stepped out, thinner, hair flecked with gray, but his eyes lit up when he saw me. I ran to him, hugging him tight, tears streaming. He smelled of industrial soap, but he was still my dad, the man who told terrible jokes. He whispered, "You saved me, Ava. I'm so proud of you." Mom stood a few steps away, her eyes heavy with regret. Dad looked at her, saying nothing, but squeezed my hand tighter. On the drive back to Cedar Falls, we didn't talk much. Dad asked about school, the corn festival, like he wanted to reclaim lost time. When we stepped into our wooden house, he paused at the door, taking in every corner like he needed to remember it. Mom moved out weeks later, renting a small apartment in a nearby town, saying she needed time to make amends. I didn't blame her, but the wounds still lingered. Dad and I started rebuilding our life, just the two of us, but I knew our journey wasn't over. Ethan would face trial, and I'd have to stand up, tell my story again to ensure he'd never hurt anyone else. I'm Ava Bennett, and though I'm only 13, I've learned that facing your greatest enemy isn't about being fearless. It's about standing up despite fear. After Ethan Cole was arrested for framing my dad, Daniel Bennett, for a murder at the Iron Horse Tavern in Cedar Falls, Iowa, I thought the nightmare was over. I was wrong. Ethan, the man my mom, Rachel, once called my new dad, faced trial, and I was called to testify. With Dad's journal, security footage, and Ethan's confession I recorded at the Corn Festival, backed by Jack Larson, Jenna, and Mia, we had enough evidence. Dad was freed, but facing Ethan again in a courtroom was the hardest challenge I'd ever met. I knew I had to be strong, not just for Dad, but for myself, and to ensure Ethan could never hurt anyone again. The trial day came, and I wore the purple dress Dad bought for my birthday 2 years ago, trying to stay calm. The Des Moines courtroom was cold, heavy with the scent of polished wood and the murmurs of strangers. Ethan sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, smaller than I remembered, but his eyes were still sharp, like a snake poised to strike. I sat beside Jack, gripping his hand to stop trembling. When the prosecutor called my name, my legs felt like lead. I walked to the witness stand, swore to tell the truth, and faced the jury. I told them everything, how Ethan threatened me, rifled through my things, touched me in the dark. I spoke of Dad's journal, the security footage showing Ethan entering the bathroom before Dad, and his confession at the Corn Festival, admitting he killed a man and planned to steal Mom's money. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. I couldn't let Ethan win. Ethan's lawyer tried to shake me. He asked if I'd misunderstood Ethan's actions, if I'd made up stories because I hated him. I stayed calm, repeating every detail exactly as it happened. The prosecutor played the confession recording, and Ethan's voice filled the courtroom, vicious and ruthless. I saw the jurors exchange glances, and Ethan's face paled. But then, out of nowhere, he leapt up, shouting, "You can't lock me up!" He shoved a bailiff, lunging for the door, sparking chaos. People screamed, and I froze on the stand. But the police quickly subdued him, cuffing him in the middle of the courtroom. His eyes locked on mine, burning with hatred, but this time I didn't look away. I stared right back, wanting him to know he couldn't break me. The jury took only 2 hours to decide. When the judge read, "Guilty on all charges, murder, conspiracy, fraud, and assault on a minor," it felt like a weight lifted from my chest. Ethan was sentenced to life without parole. He was led away, his eyes empty, and I knew he'd lost. But this victory didn't bring joy. It brought relief and a sense that I'd grown up too fast. As I left the courtroom, Jack hugged me, saying, "You did great, kiddo." But all I wanted was to go home, where Dad was waiting to start over. I knew I had to keep going, for our family and for others fighting monsters like Ethan. I'm Ava Bennett, and though I'm now 15, I still carry the scars from 2 years ago, when my life in Cedar Falls, Iowa, turned into a nightmare. My dad, Daniel Bennett, was wrongfully jailed for a murder at the Iron Horse Tavern, and Ethan Cole, the man my mom, Rachel, called my new dad, manipulated our family, working for a smuggling ring. I found Dad's journal, security footage, and recorded Ethan's confession, with help from Jack Larson, Jenna, Mia, and a mysterious figure named Mr. Hayes. Mom finally saw the truth. Ethan was sentenced to life in prison, and Dad was freed. But that journey changed me forever. I'm no longer the terrified 13-year-old hiding in a grain silo, fleeing Ethan. I've learned to stand up, face my fears, and fight for justice. Dad and I now live in our old wooden house in Cedar Falls, once filled with painful memories. We've built new routines. Sunday mornings with Dad's still burnt pancakes, Friday nights playing cards with Jack, and weekends walking through the cornfields where I once ran for my life. Jack's become family, always carrying marshmallows and calling me kiddo with a warm smile. Jenna, the Iron Horse Tavern bartender, sometimes drops by, sharing stories of old days that make Dad laugh hard. Mia, my best friend who saved me at the Corn Festival, remains my greatest confidant. They're the family I chose, the ones who stood by me when everything collapsed. Mom lives in a small apartment in Waterloo, sending long letters of apology, but I'm not ready to reply. She chose Ethan too long, manipulated by her gambling secret, and though she made amends, the wounds need time to heal. Dad says I should forgive someday, for myself, not her. Maybe he's right, but for now, I want to focus on the future. I've decided to study law to help people like Dad, wrongfully accused and stripped of everything. But I'm also doing something else. I'm using TikTok to share my story. The first video I posted about saving Dad went viral in Cedar Falls and beyond. I got messages from strangers, victims of injustice, thanking me for inspiring them. I urge them to speak out, because I know the power of truth. From this journey, I've learned 3 big lessons. First, trust your instincts. When I sensed Ethan was dangerous, I was right, and ignoring that could have been worse. Second, don't fear finding allies. Jack, Mia, Jenna, and Mr. Hayes turned my truth into reality. Third, courage is acting despite fear. I trembled facing Ethan in court, but I did it. If you're facing injustice, speak up, find help, and believe the truth will prevail. Now, sitting on our porch, watching Cedar Falls cornfields shimmer in the sun, I feel peace. Dad's in the kitchen, humming an old tune, and I know we've come through the dark. If you're hearing my story, I hope you'll share yours. The truth is worth fighting for, and you're never alone.